Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Of course, seeing this movie at like the last minute, I think, at least at my theater, Wednesday is like the last day you can see this movie. And I was like, I gotta see this. This week also, you should expect reviews like every single day. Today, Honor Among Thieves. I should call it Dungeons & Dragons because if I say Honor Among Thieves, I actually think of Uncharted 2. So Dungeons & Dragons today. Tomorrow, I am going to see, which by the time you guys see this, it'll be today. So tonight, I'm going to see the 40th anniversary showing of Return of the Jedi. I am super excited to go see that. So I'm very pumped up to see that movie. And then Wednesday, I'm going to see Sisu, which has a limited release, which is why I have to like pack everything together. And then of course, Thursday is Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm going to see that for sure. I already bought that one in advance. The other ones are kind of like, I really don't want to miss Dungeons and Dragons. I really don't want to miss Sisu. And I cannot, like, I can't not go see Return of the Jedi in theaters. Like, I'm not really going to have that opportunity a bunch. So I was like, I have to do that. I'm obligated to do that one. So there'll be a bunch of reviews coming up. But for now, Dungeons and Dragons, another video game. Well, technically it's just a board game. It's a game property. It's not a video game property. Like every other reviewer, I'm like, I have to go see it if it's a video game. But it is based off of a game. And it is, as a nerd, it is like ingrained in my culture, even if I don't even actually play D&D. This I got from Loot Crate. This I also got from Loot Crate. You know, that's all I got. I think I have one other D&D shirt as well, and that's really it. Never actually played. I was supposed to back in college with some friends, made a character, all that stuff, never played. But this is a really good movie. I thought it was really funny. I was excited to see it because I'm like, everybody was saying it was really good. It was, it's definitely comedic and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, let's see what happens. Let's go check this movie out. I saw it, of course, with it being at the end. It's one of those funny things where it's like, as often as I go to the theater, I'm always like, all right, I'm going to see this movie. Got my tickets, like done in advance, seeing everything, opening night, stuff like that. I saw this movie. Obviously, it's 3 days left. They start putting stuff as like the theater go from like ultra mega like crazy screen where they do like the epic opening where it's like, oh, here's like forests and trees and here's pirate ships in the background. This was like, it was small. It was so small. It's so funny being in there. I'm like, I could probably afford to buy a place like this. Like, it's not that big when you get to like those really tiny theaters. And it's like, it feels like it fits like 20 people max. That's what it was like. It was one of those really, it was like, this is your last chance to see this movie. And it was a much smaller theater, but it was still fun to watch. It was definitely an entertaining movie. I thought it was really funny. As the title says, I always typically say this, there will be spoilers in the second half, so I'll kind of go through those. With it being mostly comedy and stuff like that, I feel like there isn't too much to really go through as far as like, here's all the spoilers and stuff outside of, some of my favorite jokes, of course. But I definitely enjoyed it. I thought all the actors did a really good job. I thought, surprisingly, I thought the action was really well done. I was like, they do, it's Dungeons and Dragons, so despite there being magic and stuff, they actually stick to a lot of hand-to-hand stuff, especially because like I'd say like the number 2 character in the whole film is Michelle Rodriguez's character, Holga, and she's like the warrior, the brute of the whole group. So she does a lot of hand-to-hand combat, like with either actually using her hands or using weapons. And then they have, I think he's technically like the paladin that shows up later in the film. He does sword fighting, and I was like, all the action in general I think is good, but they were doing like hand-to-hand stuff for at least close quarters, and I was very surprised. I was like, this looks really, really good. And it's like, this, I love martial arts movies, I love action movies, so when I see movies that do it, and it's like, that's actually really good. You can have something where it's like, oh, that's really cool. Like that looks cool. But then it's like when they do, you can tell they put in like legit good work to be like, here's the choreography of this fight. And also they visually show it well. Cause that's another, that's half the battle. Cause you can have an amazing fight and then horrible visuals. As soon as I say that, I think of the G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie. Amazing action, and I know they have amazing action because I know the people in that movie. I know they can do action, and it is some of the worst cinematography I've ever seen for a fight sequence, where it's like, you can't have a fight sequence where there's 2 versus 20 and you're doing shaky cam and running up on people. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You can't see anything when that happens. So I was glad that the action was good, and they have wide shots so you could see the actual action happening. And there were some decent moments where it was like they went, especially because they're doing a bunch of spins and stuff like that. Like they're doing a lot of stuff without, before cutting to the, the next angle and stuff. So I really appreciated that. And that's just as someone, it's not like I, do anything with action movies, but I really appreciate it because I love martial arts growing up. So I have that eye for like action in films. So I was very pleasantly surprised by just the hand-to-hand combat that they did in this film. I was like, okay, this is way beyond what I was expecting. So I was super happy. I was like, there's some stuff. I think, going back to martial arts movies, there's a specific fight where I was like, they have to be doing like some speed ramping where they like speed it up just a little bit, because I'm like, there's no way these dudes train this hard for Dungeons and Dragons and they're moving this fast legitly, because I'm like, this is insane, like how quickly they're moving, specifically using weapons. And I was like, this has to be like sped up at least a tiny bit, but it looked great. All of it, all the action I thought was fantastic, so I was pleasantly surprised by that. And then the rest of the movie was good too. All the, you know, the comedic stuff is definitely a comedy movie. Those are just like, you know, the cool action bits, but definitely a funny movie. I like, you know, like once again, like that's kind of the spoiler stuff, talking about like my favorite jokes, but I think throughout, like, you know, there's stuff that you've seen in trailers. It's funny. There's tons of stuff in here that isn't spoiled, you know, because of clips and things like that. Like the one big clip I think is the graveyard sequence where they have like 5 questions. That actually is, you know, like if you've seen that clip, that's a small section and like an actual beat within the story. And so they actually do a really good job with like that whole moment is actually pretty good. So I enjoyed everything they did with it. I thought the characters were good. They definitely have it where it's like, okay, I could easily see them making a sequel. You know, it made money, so I'm sure there will be a second one, but the way they handled it, I was like, all right, I can see there being a sequel to this. It doesn't have to be, you know, ridiculously over the top. It's a D&D campaign. Anything could happen, so it could definitely work. And based on what I've seen as far as like some behind the scenes stuff, the creators are giant nerds who have played D&D, which explains all of the references that they have in there, where it's like, you know, they name a lot of places. Once again, just being the nerd that I am, I hear a bunch of the names and I'm like, okay, never played it, but I know that thing, I've seen that thing before, you know, like, oh, there's a mimic, I know what that is. So I, you know, even I got some of the references just, you know, we'll say through osmosis of being a nerd. So I thought that was cool, and I'm sure people who are actually into D&D have way more references that they caught for sure. So I was like, all right, this is definitely cool. Once again, action was good, the comedy was certainly well done, all the actors, you know, did a great job in the film. So I like how they handled it. All in all, I think it was a really good movie. I can't say I was pleasantly surprised, because everyone was hyping it up, and I even enjoyed it just from the first trailer. I was like, huh, a Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's like, once again, it's like not a video game movie, but it's a game movie. It's like, that was a really cool trailer. That was a pretty funny trailer. I'm actually kind of interested in this movie. I just, you know, didn't end up going to see it in time before it being in like the tiniest theater that they had. But definitely glad I got to see it in theaters. I would definitely watch this again. It's definitely one of those movies where, especially, you know, comedy movies, it's way easier to do this, where if it comes on, you can just throw it on in the background and just laugh at like your favorite jokes as it kind of comes on. It's definitely one of those movies where I could easily see myself watching it again and be like, you know what, that's funny enough to where it's like, I could laugh at that multiple times, because like that's definitely silly. It's not where it's like, oh, these jokes are really good the first time and then that's it. There are definitely jokes in here where I'm like, I'd laugh at that multiple times. I can easily tell just my type of humor. It's like, I would laugh at that multiple times, and I can easily watch the action sequences again, because like I said, I thought they were surprisingly well done and well choreographed. So all in all, definitely good. If you haven't seen it yet, I guess you have to wait until it's on the streaming if you're as late as I am, but definitely recommend checking it out if you just want to see a good comedy movie that has some decent action. But everybody does a good job in it. The comedy is good, the action was surprisingly well done, and all in all, the story I thought it was a well-paced story as well. I didn't think it was too long. It was 2 hours or so, something like that. I thought the pacing, I think because it was funny enough, it was one of those movies where I didn't feel like it lasted it didn't feel like it went too long, where it's like, oh man, it's 2 hours of a comedy movie. It actually was like a well-done comedy movie where the pacing of the jokes was good enough and the story itself was good enough, where I was like, all right, that was perfectly fine for me. It didn't feel like, oh, this drags on and it's not good enough. Because a bad comedy movie, that can drag on. You know, that can hurt. So I thought it was really well done. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. But getting into spoilers, so I mean, it's so late, you've probably already seen it, but just in case, getting into spoilers, just gonna throw out like a couple of my random favorite moments as far as like the jokes. The fat dragon, definitely funny. I thought that was really cool. I love the fact, my favorite part about that whole sequence, at first it was like, oh, this is funny, you know, it has to like struggle to get its other wing out and everything, and then it was literally so big it couldn't chase them, it was just rolling sideways. That was probably my favorite part of like that whole joke about the dragon being fat, where it was like, it literally is just rolling to try to crush them. And I was like, that's really good. I thought that was super funny. I like everything they did do with the paladin. I wouldn't say those were like my favorite jokes, but I thought they did a good job with that in his character. I was also surprised he doesn't actually stay in the film. I thought he would obviously, you know, just like everybody else, he would join them and then they would, you know, kind of keep going. But I like this character. I definitely thought he was funny, and just like the cool guy who comes in is like, no, he's actually like one of the good versions of his people. I forgot what the actual, I think Thanes or something like that. I was like, oh, that was actually really funny. So I liked his character for sure. Obviously the graveyard thing was definitely funny. Them just going through that whole sequence was like, all right, that's really good. So I certainly enjoyed that. see, one of my other favorite bits, I think, was definitely towards the end of the movie where they were going through the process of doing the also the portal, the hither tither stick. 100%, it was like when they did the portal thing, I was like, that doesn't just kind of look like Portal from the game Portal. Like, that literally looked like the portal. Like, granted, it was just a random blue circle, but it was also perfectly like an oval. It wasn't like a circle, it was an oval. And they even did it again when it was the painting. It was like, it just happened to be like an oval painting. I was like, that's not just like a blue portal that kind of looks like the portal from Portal. It was like, it's a video game, by the way. It was like, no, that's like, that was legit like the blue portal from Portal. It was very interesting. Not that I hated it, because, you know, any reference to Portal is always really cool. But I was like, it almost sounded like it had the sound effect too. I was like, am I crazy? Did I make that up just because I saw a blue portal? Did I make it up in my head that I heard the portal sound? But it was really cool. So I thought that was interesting. But, you know, going towards the end of the film, when they're dealing with the portal and trying to like figure out that whole process of like going through and getting the painting and stuff, or putting it behind the painting, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. And it's also just a little funny sequence there. But all of it was really well done. Like, them going through the actual maze was good. I love like the Black Panther with like the crazy like tendrils that could like shoot projections and stuff. I was like, that's a very interesting, like, it's already deadly enough. You don't really need to be distracted. Like, it can just chase you and kill you. Like, it doesn't need to distract you. But it's like, I could do a little less work and just trap someone in a corner, and then I'll get them just a little bit easier. And I'm like, dang, the thing, it's a giant Black Panther. It's already deadly enough. And then it has crazy like video projector tentacles off the top. I'm like, that's just effed up. Like, it's already deadly enough. But I definitely thought that was a cool little moment there. And they also have a cool reference. And I didn't know it. I noticed it, but I didn't know what it was a reference to. But they have the cartoon characters from the old D&D cartoon from back in the day. They're also in that sequence when they're going through the maze. It's actually the dude that picks up the axe. Like, that group is like the old cartoon group. And I noticed them because the dude in the axe, I was like, why is he dressed like that? Like, he looked super classic. And I think that's why it registered for me. Like, his axe just looked like the old axe that you would see. I'm like, is that just like from a picture or something? Because I could tell it was something, because I was like, he's too specifically like the barbarian character. Like, it was too like cliche look for it to not have been a reference. And that's what it was. It was the old cartoon. Obviously didn't know exactly what it was referencing at the time, but I was like, that was interesting. It was like just the way sometimes you see a character that's like, that character is too obviously cliche to not be a reference to some old version of something. And that's what it was. It was the old cartoon. So I thought that was definitely a cool reference that they had, that, like I said, I half picked up on it because I'm like, that's something, but I didn't understand what. It stuck out to me in the way he was dressed, like so obviously like almost Conan style, where it was like, that's just like, but so old school that it has to mean something. It has to be like some art piece or, you know, something like that. But it was the old cartoon. So that was cool. The way they ended things, it was like, all right, they could easily go on to a second film. They could probably, you know, include his daughter more in the second movie. I would love to see that, and, you know, just kind of see how they handle that and have that relationship, and, you know, whatever they would ultimately end up doing next, they could easily carry it on, honestly, where they obviously only beat, like, in a sense, she was like the second in command. She wasn't like the main dude, so they could easily do the next movie, or excuse me, if they, you know, really wanted to do it, they could do, you know, a trilogy, and have this guy be like, you know, the main villain of this trilogy of films, where it's like they kill the subordinate and then they go up hold on, there we go, they go up against him in the second movie, but they don't kill him. Everybody kind of goes their own ways, and then the third movie they kind of end things out. So I was like, that's easily the way they could do it, because it was like, okay, you stopped this person, but she was only a subordinate. Like, we don't even see the guy show up in the present day outside of like sort of a vision to her, and other than that, it was him in the flashback. So I was like, that's easily their way of doing it, where it's like, oh, we beat the boss of the movie, but her boss is still alive and he's out there and he's technically, most likely at least, more powerful. So I was like, that's their easy end, you know, for a sequel, if not multiple sequels, as far as like, how do we have a villain? Like, well, you didn't really kill the main villain anyway, so there you go. But all in all, definitely funny. Would definitely watch it again. You probably can't do that in theaters at this point, but definitely fun. I'll check it out, you know, whenever it's on the streaming service, as long as I don't have to pay for a new one. If it's on one of the ones I got, I'll definitely check it out again at some point, because I definitely think it's worth watching again for the jokes. And also, like I said, I was so surprised by the action. I feel like I have to bring that up because I was not expecting that at all. And I didn't hear anybody else mention that as far as the couple of reviews I watched. I was like, that was pleasantly surprising for me, at least. So we'd love to know your thoughts on the film as, you know, as a whole, really, like not just the action, but, you know, the comedy. If you're, of course, big into D&D, I know, especially in the beginning, they were referencing a lot of the stuff. So I'm curious how you guys felt about that, because they were like dropping names like crazy. Even I knew, because I was like, all right, I know Baldur's Gate for sure. And then there was like other stuff where I'm like, all right, I'm sure all of this stuff is from D&D. And they were doing that quite a bit in the beginning, but it was kind of just referencing like, they were almost just referencing like the path they were about to take on the film more than anything else. It was just like, here's how we can go from this place that's a reference and to this place that's a reference. But it was actually pretty simple, because it was like, that's actually what they ended up doing pretty much the whole movie. So I'd love to know what you guys thought about that. If you're actual big D&D fans, the references that they had, some of the spells that they had, characters that may or may not have popped up that I probably didn't catch, things like that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. Of course, if we do get a sequel, which has made a bunch of money, it got really good reviews while also doing that, so odds are a couple years down the line we're going to get a sequel for sure. We'll love to know what you guys would like to see, like what characters, even if it's just like a special spell that you think is super cool that you would love to see like visualized. Definitely let me know. I might not get that reference. I might have to Google something, but I would love to know what you guys would like to see that you're familiar with from D&D. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.